This question is from Lindsay Morgan. Okay, and Lindsay has asked, what are the best ways to design templates so different ministries can add in their own content? Right now, I'm designing in InDesign, saving the template as a JPEG, bringing it into Word as the background layer. I hate Word. Well, Lindsay, I can tell you this. I feel your pain. I am not a fan of Word, predominantly for the fact that it's really not a design resource. It is a text editor. And frankly, Publisher is very much the same. It is trying to be something that it just really is not. So the fact that you're starting with InDesign is a great start. Here, there are 3 ways that I see that you can do this, and each of these is going to help you accomplish what I think your goal is based on the way you asked your question, and that is that you're trying to keep visual consistency in your promotions. You're trying to help keep the branding going, but you want to allow for changes to be made by the end user. So you have the creative focus and format done for them. They're just adding their own text. Okay, so there's 3 ways really that you can accomplish this. All right, and so the first one is using InDesign, which you mentioned that you're using as a resource already. And this is how I create files, especially if it's going to a church that I know has some design resources. But I start with InDesign, like you mentioned. I create the design, and I add text boxes with temporary text. And I literally say event name, event date, event location, so that I know I've added enough space to include all of those details. And then when the design is complete, I go into the add layer feature and I add a new layer. And this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I add a new layer. Okay, I then select those text boxes that have the temporary text and I drag them into the new layer field. Okay, I then take the layer that all the artwork and the design is in, and I right click and I lock the layer. That way you can't drag those elements around unless you go in and unlock them, but the text fields are still empty and available to be changed and edited. Okay, I then save the file and I send it to my ministry leaders to change. And they could get in and change the design, move some elements around. But the reality is, for the majority of them, they just want to know, put the address here, put the date and time here, and because you've put in a thing that literally says, here's the space for each, all they've got to do is highlight it, type their own text in. And so that's the first way, is to use InDesign just by itself. Obviously, you've got to have multiple licenses, or one thing that some churches are doing is they will save it and it will sit on one computer, and that's like the communications resource desk, so to speak. So if youth needs to come and make some changes, they sit at that computer and they can edit the file. And if kids needs to make a change, then that's where they go, is that one computer. That way you're only paying for one set of licenses, but you still have the flexibility. The other option, something that I've been doing recently with some of the churches that I help, it's actually an idea that I got from Lifeway. I opened a file that they had sent for a Beth Moore study, and I realized, wow, I could be doing this. And that is to partner InDesign with Adobe Reader. Okay, so just like I do if I'm staying in InDesign, I create my design, I add my text fields so that I've got my spacings correct, and I complete my entire design just like I normally would. But instead of sending the InDesign file, I turn off those text layers so I know my spacing's there, but I don't want to see any of the preview, and I save as a PDF. And I go over to Acrobat Pro, okay, Acrobat Pro, and I open the file, and in the Tools menu, there is a Add Text, Editable Text Field option. And if you drag a box over the space where you want people to be able to add their own text, okay, they can then edit it once you've sent it to them. So I drag a space out with the add text field. I actually will put in notes into that field like edit this area, add this type of content. You can apply stylings, so bold, italics, stuff like that, font size. I then save the PDF and I send it to the ministry leader. And when they open it, the background image is not moving. It's a PDF. But the top pieces where it's editable files, they can type whatever they want into those files. And it's a great way for them to have flexibility of adding their own content, but not messing up the parts you've spent time creating as you built that template. Now, the other one is actually closely related to what your initial question was and some of your frustration. And the reality is that for a lot of churches out there, Microsoft Word or even Publisher is the resource they have. It's the resource that's paid for because they're using something like Microsoft 360. And so it can be frustrating, but here's how I do the process. I create my design in InDesign. I make sure all the spacing's right. I've got everything figured out. I save the file as a JPEG. Okay. I go into Word and I place it in the background, or I place it in Publisher as a background. The newest version of Word did away with some of the print preview options that used to make it really nice to drop it onto a master page. So you've got to put it in the background as a background layer and lock that layer so that they can't drag the images around. I then add text fields using the add text field box in either Word or Publisher, and I save that file and send it off. Now, that is going to create the lowest quality end product, but as I mentioned before, for many churches, it's the resources that are in their hands, and so it's the resources they use. So that's an option for you. If you've got a question you'd like to submit for Ask Rad Ideas, visit radideas.com/AskRadIdeas to submit your question.